it certainly seems like Cowboys brass is a little more bothered by the current situation than they normally would be.
They're probably feeling a little stress and anxiety about the state of the team and where they're at, because all he could really do is point the finger at himself because he refused to go out there and acquire talent that could help them win this year. He refused to do it for whatever reason. I have no idea, but it's almost like he was saying to himself, "Yeah, I'm not paying for this guy. I'm not doing this with this guy. I'm not doing that with that guy." And look what you got.
Welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast, presented by Verizon, the NFL powered by Verizon 5G. I am your host, Dave Hellman. We've got a great show for y'all today as we wrap up week 8 of this NFL season. Going to chat with our guy, NFL on Fox insider Jay Glazer. All news, all insights coming out of this week 8 slate. A little bit later on in the show, recap Monday Night Football. Steelers beat the New York Giants on Monday night. Also going to talk about the power rankings, of course. Take a look at where things stand in the NFL after a wacky weekend. Upsets galore, plenty of change at the top. But first, I've been looking forward to this one for a little bit because I knew ahead of time, win or lose, there was going to be an interesting conversation to be had about the Dallas Cowboys going out to the Bay to take on the San Francisco 49ers. Their boogeyman here over the last 2 or 3 seasons. Knew that ahead of time. Knew we were going to want to take a deep dive on the Cowboys, what ails them, because, news alert, they did not manage to get over the hump against San Francisco. They lose 30-24. Teased it on the recap episode, and now here to help me dive into all things Cowboys. Had a really fun conversation with somebody who would know a thing or two about the topic. It'd be Keyshawn Johnson, 3-time Pro Bowl receiver, currently the host of All Facts, No Breaks right here on Fox. You can also see him on Speak every weekday on FS1. A really fun conversation with Keyshawn Johnson about where things stand with the Cowboys, where they might be going. Doesn't look like it's anywhere good, but that might be an even more interesting conversation because where does that lead? Keyshawn and I dove into it. Keyshawn Johnson, first of all, thank you for hopping on the show, man. It's good to see you.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm excited to chop it up with you.
So I was really excited when I realized we were going to get you for this episode because I looked at the calendar and I said, oh, it's the day after a Cowboys-Niners game. There's going to be something fantastic to talk about, for good or for bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
And wouldn't you know that's exactly what played out on Sunday Night Football. Dallas Cowboys fall to 3-4. And you know, I like to do a little research for when I have guests on the show, make sure I'm, up on everything. Watched you on Speak on Monday afternoon, and I love the point you made about the state of the Dallas Cowboys right now, which is to say, what are you going to do? You're going to go get something, you're going to go get somebody at the trade line? You need about 9 players to fix all the issues that we're seeing with the Cowboys. So I'm sorry because I'm putting you on the spot, but what exactly can the Cowboys do to try to correct this right now?
Nothing. They just got to ride the ship, right? And hope that it turns around. Think about the next 4 games, though. They got Atlanta, Philadelphia, Houston, Washington.
Before Thanksgiving. All before Thanksgiving.
All before Thanksgiving, and I think they might play like the Giants.
They get the Giants on Thanksgiving.
Yeah. At that point, they might as well just cancel Christmas. For real.
Don't put the
they gotta
kettles
go
out
at
this
least
Christmas.
2-2. Anything short of 2-2, it's pretty much a wrap.
I completely agree with you. And everything we've seen through the first 7 games of this season, I mean, they can't run the ball. They can't stop the run. I think everything starts there, but we could go down another half dozen reasons. But the reason I ask you how they can fix it, I agree with what you're saying, but Mike McCarthy's in a contract year. The whole coaching staff didn't get renewed contracts. Mike Zimmer signed on for a 1-year deal. Riding it out, to me, means that we're going to see massive changes with the Cowboys in January.
Yeah, I don't think Mike McCarthy's coming back. I don't think Mike Zimmer will come back. I think that we'll see an entire new staff for the 2025 season. There's no question about it, because I don't think anything short of an NFC championship game appearance, whether the team is 3-5 now or whatever the case may be, if they were not going to make it to the NFC championship game, he was probably going to wind up not being renewed anyway.
With all of that in mind, and I've been very critical. I covered the Cowboys for 10 years. I lived in DFW for 10 years. With all of that in mind, and knowing the shockingly low amount of resources that Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones put into the team in the offseason, $20 million on outside free agents, dead last in the league by a huge margin. Why even sign on for this last year of Mike McCarthy if this is what it was going to be? Because I don't know that I saw the Cowboys being this mediocre, but it certainly didn't look like a team that was ready to take the next step from what they were last year.
Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't just decide to just cut bait. But when you win 12 games, I guess you look at it and you go, okay, we won 12 games. We stubbed our toe in the playoffs against Green Bay. Maybe if we bring the coach back, because the offense was fine. Offense was scoring points and all those sort of things, that maybe we could flip the script, so to speak, and find some good in what's left in this situation with the players that we have. I'm assuming that's what they was thinking, and it's not going that way.
You were in Dallas for 2 seasons. I think you were there on a 9-7 team, and
Yes.
then in a 6-10 team, or a season that didn't go so hot.
Probably, yeah.
What do you think that building is like right now? With and like we've seen Jerry Jones barking at members of the media, and a guy with very thick skin, a guy that kind of enjoys the circus of it all, right? Like Jerry Jones likes for there to be conversation about his team, but this feels different to me. Like, what do you think that mood is? Because it certainly seems like Cowboys brass is a little more bothered by the current situation than they normally would be.
I think they are probably feeling a little stress and anxiety about the state of the team and where they're at, because all he could really do is point the finger at himself, because he refused to go out there and acquire talent that could help them win this year. He refused to do it for whatever reason. I have no idea, but it's almost like he said to himself, yeah, I'm not paying for this guy. I'm not doing this with this guy. I'm not doing that with that guy. And look what you got.
I've been, like I said, throughout the offseason, I've been saying that I didn't see it. I didn't see enough steps taken to try to improve this roster. I will throw it out there, though. It's very ironic, and it feels like ancient history that Dak Prescott signed his incredible extension and CeeDee Lamb. Like within 2 weeks of the start of the season, both of these guys signed on. It sounds like Micah Parsons will be available moving forward. I don't think it's good enough, but there is still plenty of like blue chip talent on this Cowboys roster. Saw CeeDee Lamb have 146 yards, 2 touchdowns. Maybe it was too little too late against San Francisco, but is there any reason for optimism there with the amount of, blue chip players, at least, even if this isn't a deep roster?
Not this year. CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott are really only two on the offensive side of the ball. A lack of running game. They had 56 yards against San Francisco. They refused to run the ball, even though you signed Dalvin Cook and you brought him up off the practice squad. You didn't utilize him, right? Then defensively, there's no Micah Parsons, there's no Lawrence. They can't stop the run. Whenever you need this antidote of a running attack, just find a schedule to Dallas Cowboys, because you can go for 200 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, think about the teams that they lost to. All of them gashed them in the running game. Every last one, from the Saints on down to what we saw in San Francisco, they all had 200 yards rushing. The Lions, the same. I mean, like teams just decided that this is how they're going to treat the Cowboys.
Crazy thing is, it felt like they were playing better against the run on Sunday night, at least in the beginning. And then by the end of the game, San Francisco had more than 200 yards.
Exactly. When you start off games and it looked a certain way, the game ain't won at the start. The game is won by the end. Completely. So a lot of people, it looked like they was playing really good in the first quarter. Yeah, a lot of teams look great in the first quarter. It's like the Lakers in basketball. Everybody's like, they're 3-0. Man, they got 80-something damn games to go, or 79 games to go. Like, yes, it looks great today. By the time we get to February, the Lakers still going to be rolling like that.
Man, with what's going on with the Dodgers in this town, it would be wild if they were. That's a conversation for a different day. And on top of that, like it just, like it's CeeDee Lamb, great. Micah Parsons, great. Dak Prescott could stand to raise his level of play this year. It doesn't feel like the depth on this team is there either. And I guess that's part of.
They don't have any depth.
I mean, Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler
He's
followed
in
Dan Quinn to
Washington.
Washington. Yeah, like it didn't make major news in the offseason, but this is what I was so concerned
Well, it did
about.
for people that pay attention to football.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you
Say
pay
it
attention
louder.
to football, then you know that he got some nice pieces from the Cowboys that he took to Dallas. Even the fact that Noah Brown plays in Washington prior to Houston. I mean, prior to Washington, he was in Houston. Prior to Houston, he was in Dallas.
Yep.
They allowed him to get away after they signed him, developed him, and then said, we don't want you. He goes to Houston, and now he's a hero in yesterday's game.
This is the part where I also feel contractually obligated to mention that the Cleveland Browns got a better price for Amari Cooper than the Dallas Cowboys did 2 off seasons ago.
Yeah, they let Amari Cooper walk out the door. Somebody that they desperately wish they had right now to lift some of the pressure off of CeeDee Lamb.
I think it's dangerous, and I love your point about the schedule, and this thing looks crazy. I mean, you got the 5-3 Falcons. The Eagles look like they're rounding into form. Texans keep winning games, even if it's by the skin of their teeth on a lot of occasions.
What, they lost one game this year?
They've lost 2, but
Yeah.
they're doing
Wonders.
okay. Yeah,
They're fine.
my question for you is my point really is I get that it's the NFL. Maybe the Cowboys can find a way to steal a win here or a win there. Maybe it'll be better than it looks. But if they can't, one thing I'll say about the Cowboys is it's very rare for them to be out of the conversation. Like you said a minute ago, cancel Christmas. It's very rare for the Cowboys to be out of the conversation before the holidays even get rolling. What do you think?
They're 3-5.
They're
Cowboys.
They're 3-4 right now.
I mean, 3-4. My bad. They're 3-4. 4 games. Hell of a 4-game stretch that's
Tough.
coming. Let's say that they split. They go 2-2. That's 6 losses
At Thanksgiving.
at Thanksgiving. There's no way they can rebound from that.
That doesn't even, I mean, it doesn't necessarily lighten up either. I mean, Cincinnati's still on this schedule, Tampa Bay, and 2 more games against Philly and Washington. That's way close to the end of the season. But that's the thing that concerns me is this could be uncharted territory. Typically, when a season gets away from the Cowboys, it's because Dak Prescott got hurt or Tony Romo got hurt a couple times, and it really sent things off the rails. This feels like it could go off the rails with everybody relatively healthy, and that's a crazy prospect.
Yeah, and the teams that they've beaten, Cleveland Browns, the New York Giants, and a hope and a prayer at the last second touchdown throw from Dak Prescott
To beat Pittsburgh.
They got out of there with a prayer. Think about that.
Literally the last snap.
So it's not like they're beating teams that's good. You know, Pittsburgh's a good team, but they don't have any signature wins.
Not against the elite of the NFL's.
No, not at all.
So let me ask you this, and I mean, it sounds like we're pretty well in lockstep on this. And the rate it's going, it's hard to imagine a world where Mike McCarthy gets renewed. I agree with you.
NFC Championship game, yeah. Outside of that, no.
Okay, to get us there, or even to get us into a world where we can imagine the Cowboys being playoff contenders at the end of this season. I think I know the answer, but can you draw up a reason for optimism? Is if Dak and CeeDee just go ape shit together, the
problem is the problem is those 4 games we just laid out.
Yeah.
They've got to at least go 2-2. To even have a hope and a prayer to stay afloat. Because at least if you go 2-2, you're 5-4.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, you're 5-6.
5-6, yeah.
You're 5-6, and you still can scratch and claw, and
you get that mini bye after Thanksgiving. You can kind of refocus.
But even going 5-6, what you want to beat, you want to beat Washington and Philly. Those are your targets, because you're 1-3 in the conference right now.
Yeah.
So you don't want to drop more conference games. You want to beat those two in your division. You know, Atlanta and Houston, they're in the AFC. Okay, that's cool. That comes down to a tiebreaker scenario, whatever. But you at least, if you could beat Philadelphia and Washington, you could really save your season.
Dallas has historically, I mean, under Dak Prescott, owned the NFC East. Like, that's the one thing. And I think I heard you talking about this on Speak as well. They've owned the NFC East. Great. That's because the Giants and Commanders have been
bad,
awful for most of that time.
The Commanders aren't good. Bad anymore.
Not only are they not bad, Philadelphia and Washington can run the hell out of the football.
Yeah.
And I think that's where every conversation about this team starts for me until I see something else. Is like, if you can competently run the football, I don't see how the Cowboys have a chance to beat you. And so it's crazy to think. I did not think the Cowboys were going to win 12 games this year. I didn't think they were going to win the division. I did think they were going to be in it until the end of the year. And sitting here right now, I don't know, man. It doesn't feel likely.
Time to move on.
You said it, not me, but man, it feels more possible than ever that is the case. It's going to be very interesting if that happens, changing the coaching staff, but you are committed to the quarterback.
The quarterback's fine. I don't have a problem with the QB. I don't have a problem with the QB. I don't have a problem with Mike McCarthy. I just got a problem with the team and the lack thereof, toughness and will and things of that nature. They've got to figure out who they want to be. What are we?
This will be a conversation for when they do that. But I mean, can that be fixed with a coaching hire? I mean, Bill Parcells was so famous for being, having the clout to go into Dallas. Yeah.
But then Jerry got in the way and Bill said, I don't want to be around here anymore. But he started to turn the program around.
Is there, I hate to say that name, the most
Belichick.
That's the one.
But I don't know if Belichick can get along with. It's such a these older coaches like that, they don't want to think about it. He dealt with Mr. Kraft. Mr. Kraft never got in the way.
Right.
20 years he wasn't in the way. You don't want to. These coaches don't want to deal with owners that's constantly having press conference, constantly meddling. Unless he changes his approach. Maybe Bill changed his approach. Maybe he doesn't care anymore. I don't know.
Bill Belichick dealing with an owner that speaks to the media 4 times a week would be must-see TV.
Questioning his play calling like he did Mike McCarthy, right?
Bad routes and bad concepts.
Play concepts.
That would be something to watch. I mean, is that – and everything about Jerry Jones suggests – he moved on from Jason Garrett, and he said, if I'm going to let go of a coach that I spent 10 years developing, I want a guy who's been there and done that. And that was Mike McCarthy. Well, if winning a Super Bowl isn't good enough to get it done in Dallas, then maybe that is the only guy that Jerry Jones would consider.
Yeah, but there's Vrabel. There's Pete Carroll. And then I'm sure there's somebody else that's floating around out there.
I'm curious to see, and I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but if Jerry Jones would insist on that strategy again of like the proven NFL head coach, as opposed to, the names we're going to hear all through the winter, like Ben Johnson, the OC in Detroit, and some of those, the hot shot offensive minded guys that maybe come in.
Maybe you go steal somebody's coach.
An like a current NFL,
yeah.
That would be wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the power of the star, so I can't rule it out. But how often do you see a sitting NFL head coach leave for an NFL opening?
Depending on what their dream is, like you think of I don't know, you think of a situation where we was able to go get John Gruden and bring him to Tampa from Oakland.
Right.
The Jets were able to go get Parcells from the New England Patriots after going to the Super Bowl. So it can be done, but I don't know who's out there that you could go, like, who would you go clip?
I think it's such a weird crossroad for the Cowboys because, like, this isn't good enough. But what is the next step? And, I mean, I think that's going to fall on Jerry and Stephen Jones, assuming we get to that.
Yeah, I don't know who you could go clip, but there may be a coach out there.
I think can I be honest with you? I'm more interested by this than 10 more games of whatever the Dallas Cowboys are putting out there right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see if they can turn it around, man. Like I said, I didn't have high
As
expectations.
they say, what's it worth to you?
To turn it around?
To go get a coach.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's what we're going to have to find out. And whether it's, I mean, Belichick is the obvious one and the one that we'll be talking about until he takes a job somewhere, But there's half a dozen different ways to do this. And I guess it's going to fall on ownership to figure out what that is, whether they want to try. I mean, it would be eerie to see, because the Parcells situation is so similar,
Yeah.
It would be eerie to see them try that again with the tried and true head coach.
Jimmy Johnson, Bill Parcells, and Bill Belichick are all kind of together. They
Right.
all like friends or whatever you want to. So Jimmy had bad experience with the Cowboy situation with Jerry Jones, even though he was a friend of his and da. Does he say, yeah, you could do this? Or does he say, man, I wouldn't do it?
At the end of the day, though, kind of what you're talking about with like going to get another team's coach. Like if the Dallas Cowboys want to give you a shot and the prestige that would come with bringing them back to their former glory, I think a lot of head coaches would be tempted to give that a shot.
See, like, do you go get Sean McDermott, right?
Oof.
Do you go steal him from a Buffalo? Like that's the type of coach I'm talking about. Like, do you go get a guy who is there but not quite there?
I mean, there
Maybe,
have been, every time the Bills lose a bad game, you get questions about Sean McDermott. I think
but
that's
do you
just
try to steal that, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, he's built one of the most consistent programs in the NFL right now.
Do you look at Sean McVay and say, hey, man, it's the Dallas Cowboys? Do you try to steal him?
That would be, I can't say it would be unprecedented, but man, it would be wild to see, especially with where things are headed for the Cowboys. And this feels like it's headed
miracles with quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just throwing it up there to see if it sticks.
I mean, at this point, that's all you can do with the Dallas Cowboys is
if they're going to move on from Mike McCarthy, they got to find a coach.
We'll see where it goes, man. I always, it's dangerous to just assume that things are going to stay bad. I know that's not how the NFL works, but like I said, when every opponent you play can get 200 yards on the ground, it's hard to see this thing having
literally every opponent.
Literally every opponent. It's hard to see this thing having a happy ending. It's fun to talk through some of the possibilities with you. That we'll have to have you back on as we've got a little
anytime,
more,
man.
When we've got a little more clarity about this.
Anytime.
We'll check in. But man, the vibes in Dallas about as rough as I can remember any time in recent history anyway. But Keyshawn Johnson, man,
thanks
it's fun having
Dave.
you on. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon, man. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Thanks again to Keyshawn Johnson for hopping on the show. Let's take it to our other conversation, our weekly chat with NFL on Fox insider Jay Glazer. Such a good conversation. All the latest news and insight coming out of the weekend. Had a chance to catch up about what Tua's return can mean to the Dolphins. I know they lost, but I still think that's a big addition to the Miami roster. Also talked about whether or how the New York Jets can try to rescue any semblance of success this season, as well as an in-depth talk about the bizarre situation with Anthony Richardson and his sub out of that loss to Houston, something that's making all the rounds this week, and a chance to catch up with Jay about how the Colts might address that strange situation. All right, back as always with our buddy Jay Glazer. Jay, how we doing, my man?
All right, man. How we doing? What an unbelievable day yesterday. Oh my God.
I'm still trying to process it all, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be one that sticks with you for a while. I want to catch up with you on some of the fallout out of all of those crazy games. I guess I'm going to start with maybe the most perplexing team in the NFL. Talk for weeks about all these decisions the New York Jets have made to kind of to stop the bleeding, stem the tide. You know, they moved on from Robert Saleh. They trade for Devontae Adams. They fall to 0-3 since making the switch to Jeff Ulbrich. Do you have a read on where the vibes are now? It feels like a very like now what sort of situation for the Jets. I mean, where how are they feeling right now?
It looks like they can have Vince Lombardi in there. It wouldn't work. It doesn't matter. Just I've talked to you about culture. It starts from the top of Woody Johnson. And I got to point the finger there. You know, I thought Saleh was a good coach. I think Ulbrich's an incredible prospect for head coach. Obviously, the personnel I thought that Joe Douglas brought in on paper is really good. And every time I talk to them, they're still like, why can't we get this team going? It's kind of been the same question you've had with the Jets for years and years and years and years and years. And that starts with culture. That's, when culture um, is bad from the top down, it's hard to overcome that.
You know a lot. You have a lot of experience with that New York market. I mean, it's a tough place to be when
Yeah.
things aren't going well. And we're only at the half point of the season. I get their season's not mathematically over, but I mean, how ugly does this thing have the potential to get if they can't pull out of this nosedive?
Yeah, but I think a lot of people need to look inside themselves and go, hey, what's going on here? Including the quarterback, Aaron Rodgers. I'm not playing. I know he's banged up, but still, I think the quarterback position is really, has been a hindrance to them this year. I don't think Aaron would argue with that. But the other interesting thing about New York, and I remember Ernie Accorsi, the old Giants general manager, told me this.
Mm-hmm.
He said, the Jets and Giants don't compete with each other. The Jets and Giants compete in this town with the Yankees. And that's always sitting right there. It's different. It's always up there. But when you're the Jets and they're waiting for the same old Jets, and it's again it's this sky is falling type thing that goes there. And too often they the owner, again, I'm going to bring him back to the owner a lot. He tries to play fantasy football, and that's not what works. What works is cohesion. What works is culture. What works is having a team atmosphere together, not just, oh, let's bring in these different pieces and it's going to work because it works in fantasy football. It doesn't work in the NFL.
That's a very interesting point. I mean, for the better part of 2 years now, it kind of feels like the Jets are just throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks.
Right.
I mean,
and a lot of it is the owner. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not, oh, these are all Joe Douglas moves. There's a lot that the owners, I want you to do this. I want you to do this. I want this here. I want this here. I want this here. When I went out last year to training camp, man, it was a sideshow with how they had set everything up with Hard Knocks. And you had this strip in the middle of the field that it was like, I don't remember if they called it Celebrity Row or I forget what they called it, but they called it something. And he shows up with a chain on with the Sauce Gardner thing. And just, man, it was a sideshow. When Dan Campbell's teams don't do that, right?
No.
And listen, Sean McVay's teams are out here in Hollywood and they have the chance to do that. They don't do that, so it's just, it's different.
I'm definitely getting ahead of myself, but I mean, and like I said, their season's not over, but if they can't course correct to some degree, I mean, where do you even see this going? Like, there's a head coaching hire to be made. There's going to be so much speculation about Aaron Rodgers.
It's just, I don't know. It'll be a rebuild. And it's going to rebuild with a team where the top prospects aren't going to look and go, oh, yeah, let me go in there because things are going to change. They're not. Yeah, I'm despite all this, I'm telling you, despite all this, I still have, if there's a guy who can turn around, and just because I've known the guy for so long and so many other coaches just love him, is Jeff Ulbrich. And it's just like the attitude. I know yesterday with the timeouts, it's like, oh my gosh, it's just, we're all over the place there. But there's so many other things you have to deal with in that building that I think takes away from focus, which is, that product on the field. But again, when you talk to other head coaches in the league, the Sean McVays and Raheem Morris's and Dan Quinn's who've kind of trained Ulbrich for years and years and years, and they're like, man, this guy's he's going to be one of us one day. Matt LaFleur's like, they always have this, they've always built him up in such high regard. I know it's hard to see right now, but I still think if there's a guy who can kind of, he's as raw as you get. He'll call guys out in that team meeting, in that locker room. That's what they need right now. For some reason, man, it's just not clicking. It's just not turning on.
Kind of defies explanation when, I mean, like I talked about it yesterday. Like, they didn't even play some atrocious game against the Patriots and still just couldn't find a way to get it.
I don't get it either. And either do they in their building. It's just like, why is this not happening? We got to get this to happen. And, the players are better than that. And I think I do like the makeup of the locker room. I really do. And I'm not, I don't think it's the season's out the window yet. Just know the makeup of the guys in there.
We'll see how it goes for the Jets. A wild, weird finish in Colts Texans, but even weirder than the finish is the comments that Anthony Richardson made afterward that he was tired and that's why he subbed himself out for a big third down. it's going to be talked about everywhere. It does, it feels, the type of comment. I mean, that's got to lead to some uncomfortable conversations from the top down in that building. I mean, where do the Colts go from here? How do they move forward after that episode with Anthony Richardson?
Well, first thing you need to do is say, okay, time for extra conditioning. Number one. Number two, listen, I started the first mixed martial arts training program for pro athletes in this country in 2007. First guy we had was Jared Allen, who was a part-time defensive end, full-time long snapper, and went off and ripped off more sacks than anybody else that year in the NFL. Highest contract. Everybody called and said, man, whatever you did for us, do it for us. Did for him, do it for us. And me, Randy Couture, and Chuck Liddell kind of came together with this program, and we've trained upwards of 1,000 pro athletes. And our entire thing, we call it Unbreakable MMA, to push your breaking points and push your breaking points and push your breaking points so football is easy. And every time we tell these guys, listen, we're going to come in here. It's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. But if you could do a 3-minute round or a 5-minute round in here with a 1-minute break, you damn sure can do a 7-second round with a 1-minute break there. And football's easy, right? We don't put our hands on our hips. We don't show we're hurt. We don't show we're tired. We're tired. Our fighters cannot take a stool in between rounds. We want them pacing back and forth and pacing back and forth. And for the other guys sitting on the stool going, man, why is that guy not sitting on a stool? What is wrong with him? What's wrong with Randy Couture? What's wrong with Lane Johnson? What's wrong with Andrew Whitworth? What's wrong with Calais Campbell? What's wrong with all these guys? Like, what's going on here? And that's the opposite of everything that we've just tried to teach these guys over the years. Man, on a football field, you're hurt and tired. You'll never, ever, ever know. In a cage with our guys, you'll never know. Now, off the field, I talk mental health. Oh, you're going to know when I'm hurt. Totally different, right? But you need that, the unbreakable mindset on that football field and in a cage. And, man, for the life of me, when I heard that yesterday, it just went against the fabric, everything at least that we've coached for years. And I like Anthony a lot. And the guys in there like him a lot. And I think he's going to look back in this, I would hope, and go, man, that's a teachable moment. If I'm ever tired and can't be out there every play, and every play to me is a round. You got to win every round, right? Every single play. That's why our guys too. You got a chance to put your hands on somebody, we're going to make it hurt every single round. May not win or lose it, but we're going to make it hurt. And I would hope this will be a teachable moment. He'll go, oh man, I got to make sure that not only am I out there, I'm running circles around everybody else so I can give my teammates the best chance to win.
When the face of your locker room has an episode like this, I mean, it's one thing if this is anybody else on the team, but it is the starting quarterback. Like, do you think Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard need to worry about the effect that this could have on the rest of the roster when you see the franchise quarterback do something like this?
It depends how it's handled. Again, if it's a teachable moment and Richardson goes, man, I'm going to show these guys this will never happen again. I will outwork the world. And listen, every time we train somebody, I said the secret of greatness, it's not a secret. Find out who the best is and do more than them. That's it. So if you know the best is Tom Brady, find out what he does and let's do more. Now, is it harder than everybody else? Yeah, that's the whole point. It ain't supposed to be easy. So find out who the best is and do more than them. So if I'm him starting today, I come in there. I am doing so much extra. I'm going to show these guys. And I can see a guy turn it around. The whole point also of practice and reps is to get better, to improve. All right, so this doesn't have to be a death sentence. But if you show guys, I'm going to just throw it in now, and I'm not going to be that same guy. You're going to see a totally different guy. And you'll never have to worry about this ever again. I would welcome that with open arms. We've seen guys change all the time in our cage. And I would love for that to happen because the guy does have all the talent in the world. But it's not just, look, if you're hearing about this saying, man, I was gassed. You got to look at that and say, okay, if he's not putting that time in for the physical part, what else is he not putting in? We got to make sure he outworks the world. He's going to out-eat you. He's going to out-study you. He's going to out-film you. It doesn't stop. Greatness has to be a sickness. You got to be crazy to be great.
That's a bar, Jay. Yeah.
There you go.
I'm going to take that advice to heart for podcast hosts too.
There you go. It has to in everything you do. Listen, man, just to get where I am, I just out-grinded the world, and I was willing to get rejected more than any human being on the planet. It's got to be a sickness. I got rejected for 11 years for a full-time job, making $9,450 a year. It's brutal. You just have to go and go and go. You got to be sick. You got to be great. Greatness has to be. You got greatness. You got to have some sickness.
We got to get you on the phone with Anthony Richardson because I'm feeling inspired right now. All right, I did want to talk to you. I know the Dolphins lost. Kudos to the Arizona Cardinals for a huge comeback, but I think it's important how much more viable the Miami Dolphins
Yeah.
look with Tua back in the lineup. Just what are the vibes in Miami? The effect that his presence back on the field has for the Dolphins? Because I do, even after a loss, I feel so much different about the Dolphins than I did before Tua came back.
Yeah, it's without a doubt because now they know, okay, if our defense, which has been playing really well under Anthony Weaver, can just get back up there, we're always going to be in it. Our offense is obviously completely different with Tua. And it was interesting. And I said this on Fox yesterday. There were a lot of people saying, oh my gosh, he should retire. And I just want to be sensitive now I say this. I've worked with a lot of ex-players. I started a whole charity on this about 10 years ago, with putting combat vets and former players together when the uniform comes off. And people were worried about his long-term, health from between the ears if there's another concussion. But the other part of that is, and every time you talk to somebody associated with Tua, and he kind of alluded to it the other day, of when the uniform comes off and you don't have football anymore, you don't have that locker room, you don't have that structure, you don't have that team, you don't have that schedule. That could be equally scary and sometimes dangerous for guys. And I think that's what he was alluding to the other day, saying, hey, I need this. I need football. Think about it. And it's at such a young age. And again, I've seen a lot of guys just fall off not having that team. Losing your team, losing your locker room sucks. It sucks. And it's really scary for a lot of dudes. So if everybody out there trying to put their 2 cents on what he should be doing, he's the one who got all the information. He's the one that talked to all the doctors. He's the one that decided to make the decision. And rightfully so, it should be him. It shouldn't be us. So if he decided to say, oh, I'm not doing it, I get it. If you decide to say, I need this, and it's both issues between your ears, right? It really is. And so that's where I look at it. We were all, let me say we, but a lot of people were trying to put their opinion in it when it wasn't them. And I just want you to understand that whole other thing. And with football also, when it's done, it's done. And that's where football players, I think, have had a harder time. Like, again, I started wrestling in 82, boxing in 88, mixed martial arts in 99. I still spar. I'm 54. I still wrestle because I'm afraid for myself when I don't have that. And I even say, like, I'd rather I die from, I'd rather that sport kill me than I die from not doing it. And it's, but basketball, you can shoot around with your friends. Baseball, you go out and have catch. Hockey, you can skate, right? But football, it's done. And these guys, a lot of these guys, since they're a little kid, have been told where to go, when to go, who to sit with, who to eat with, who to train with, who to study with, what time practice is, what time school is, what time this is, what time workouts are. That structure's gone. I really don't want to minimize how difficult that is for guys, especially someone in your 20s, when nothing else is going to replace that for you behind your rib cage.
It's a different conversation, but I think about that a lot with suspensions. A lot of times, like when a player gets suspended, you're not allowed in the building.
Yeah,
and I've always thought that was counterintuitive to take a guy out of the community, out of the structure, out of the routine. I think it's very, I mean, and it's so much more when you're talking about potentially calling it a career. I'm with you, and clearly you hear about it so much. That's something that is.
Yeah, I've seen the dangers firsthand, and that's why I'm saying it. It's been a lot of players I've worked with and walked this walk with out of suicide, out of dark holes. I've done it for a long time, so that's why I think I come with a different perspective of it, and I'm proud that I've been able to lift these guys up, and they've been able to lift me up at the same time.
Clearly, I don't want to strike the wrong tone. It's clearly a much different thing. But in addition to Tua coming to that decision and all of the weight behind that,
this is obviously a broader subject. I'm talking about players when it's over, right?
Sure.
But that's what people are calling for, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I think that's what he was saying the other day. What am I going to like? No, like I have the information, and it's where I need to be.
Yeah, it's tough because I do I worry about Tua. I worry about guys' long-term health all the time, but at the end of the day, I come down on the side of like, I'm going to trust him
Yeah.
to make a decision that largely
But
affects
also,
him
it's
and
his
his
decision.
family.
Like my
Yeah.
friends still like, what are you doing, Jay? Seeing the stuff that I'm doing, it's sparring and wrestling. I'm like,
Yeah.
you guys, I get where your viewpoint is, but I also know what I need for my soul. And it may not be the best, probably not the best long term, but it's helping me right now. And I'll continue to do it. And again, maybe something will change, but it's my decision. It's nobody else's.
You feel like that, and that's where I was going to go next. Is just it also on a less serious level though, but it has to have such an effect on the Dolphins as a team, like
Yeah.
your mindset, your approach when you have a quarterback that can help you score 27
Yeah.
points when you've been averaging 10 per week.
Yeah. And let's get back to the original thing here. Yes. When he comes back in, they're like, all right, we know we're complete again. We know we have our leader out there. And he has a different swag this year, completely different swag. Right?
He's got some attitude. Yeah. He's got some
absolutely.
attitude this year.
He's more talkative. He has more attitude. Like, hey, that's our captain over there. Absolutely.
Jay, love talking to you, man. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye, brother. Bye, brother.
We'd be remiss if we didn't touch on a little Monday Night Football. The Steelers wrapped up Week 8 with a 26-18 home win against the New York Giants. They improve to 6-2 heading into their bye week. And I got to be fair. It's turned into a pretty entertaining little football game, which I can't say I was fully expecting before kickoff. And honestly, pretty sleepy first 3 quarters. Then the Giants and Steelers combined for 19 points in the fourth quarter to kind of salvage this thing. Mike Tomlin has to be giddy about this formula because the Steelers have always won games with defense and special teams. Shocker of shocker. They did it again on Monday night. Calvin Austin got things going with a 73-yard punt return touchdown. It's back-to-back weeks special teams have really starred in a primetime Steeler game. They blocked a field goal against the Jets. It's a punt return against the Giants. Defense showing up, doing its thing, holding the Giants to just 1 touchdown on the night. And, of course, you get the big plays. TJ Watt can single-handedly wreck a game. 2 sacks, 7 tackles on Monday. And, of course, one of the more impressive solo acts you'll see all season long. Late in the fourth quarter of this game, beats Jermaine Illuminor around the edge, sacks Daniel Jones, strips Daniel Jones, recovers his own forced fumble right there in the pocket. He can do it all. Have a feeling Jermaine Illuminor is regretting his comments from earlier in the week where he said he wanted to be left on an island one-on-one against TJ Watt. Like I said, Watt with the 2 sacks. Not just TJ Watt either. Alex Highsmith had 12 pressures and 2 sacks. And then for good measure, because the strip sack didn't quite seal it for Pittsburgh, Beanie Bishop, my guy, shows up again, repping for all of us short kings. Had 2 picks against the Jets last week. Gets the final pick of Daniel Jones in this game. So we knew all of that was possible because it's been the Steelers' formula for being over 500, at least since Ben Roethlisberger retired. Scrapping out these games, getting enough plays on the margins to win more than you lose. Remember last year, they were getting outscored on the season while still finding ways to stack wins. Mike Tomlin wizardry. This feels so much more sustainable, and we got to keep giving credit where it's due to Mike Tomlin for making the switch. The Steelers have a higher ceiling on offense with Russell Wilson calling the shots. 420 yards of offense against the Giants. They bogged down in the red zone a little bit, probably settled for more field goals than they'd prefer, but 420 yards of offense and 26 points. They went off for 30 plus against the Jets. They're averaging 30 points a game since Russ came in. I know it's only 2 games, but it's a stark improvement over the 21 points per game with Justin Fields, and it's an immeasurable improvement over to some of the performances we got used to seeing in the last couple years. Russ, 20 of 28 for 278 and a touchdown. Most of it is just smart, efficient passing, but you do see the element of the explosive passing game. 3 explosive passes from Russ on the night. And in the second half is where it really got pretty. Calvin Austin breaking out in a big way. In addition to the punt return, Russ with just a teardrop rainbow shot, 29-yard passing touchdown at the start of the fourth. And then, honestly, I think one of the best throws I've seen all season, his 43-yarder to George Pickens a little bit later on in the fourth, just on a rope, looked like a magnet just attracting the football, how beautifully it was placed from 43 yards away. Magnificent throw from Russ, and just haven't seen much of that from the Steelers offense, and it opens everything up for the ground game. 167 yards. This is a much more dynamic Steelers offense. Even on a night where they settled for too many field goals, like 26 points, you would have killed for 26 points from the Steelers offense the last couple years. It's not something they should take for granted. And I think it makes them legitimately dangerous. Like, I'll go as far as to say, even when they were winning games, I never took the Steelers seriously. And I'm talking about this year. Didn't take the 3-0 start all that seriously. Not sure that getting up to 4-2, 5-2 even did all that much for me, because you did see the struggles when they had a hard time getting above 17, 20 points. If they can reliably get north of 24 and let TJ Watt and company do their thing, that's a real deal formula for success. Double-digit wins feels plausible. It is going to get a lot harder because Pittsburgh has yet to play a division game. The entire division schedule is backloaded, so you still got all of those AFC North games to go, but that's why it feels so big that they've stacked so many wins. 6 at the bye week. We'll see where it goes, but even with a tough schedule remaining, I feel so much better about the Steelers than I have at really any point in the last 2-3 seasons. So kudos to them. Another big primetime win for Pittsburgh. New York sports, tough stretch, guys. The Jets are 2-6. The Giants fall to 2-6. The Yankees are in an 0-3 hole to the Dodgers in the World Series. Newspaper headlines in the Big Apple probably not going to be too much fun here over the next few days. I am curious, just one quick note on the Giants. Owner John Mara has already come out and said he doesn't want to start over with a new general manager and head coach. Sounds like Joe Shane and Brian Daboll are safe for the year. Doesn't sound like there's going to be sweeping change when this season is over, which makes me wonder. 2-6. It seems beyond obvious that the Giants will be pivoting at the quarterback position when the season is over. I wonder if the Giants consider selling off some assets at the trade deadline. Like, if you're going to retool and try to rebuild this thing, it seems like it makes sense, especially if there's no mandate from on high that you got to find a way to dig out of this if you're going to keep your jobs. I don't know. Trade deadline's in a week. Giants seem like a prime candidate to try to get something from a team that looks dead in the water. Not telling anybody to trade Dexter Lawrence. I think that's a step too far. But there are some pieces on this Giants team that could maybe accelerate the rebuilding process if you know you're going to stick with Daboll and Shane. So that's what I'm wondering about the New York Giants. Surprisingly fun fourth quarter Monday Night Football. Congrats to the Steelers on a big win. Before we wrap the show up, let's get to it. You know the drill. Before we can move on to the next week, it's time to take a look at the power rankings, assess where things stand across the league. Make sure we give you your props or your shame, depending on who you are. Get everybody nice and riled up as we head into the next weekend of games. Let's take a look at the power rankings. If I can get the graphic, yeah, there's the beautiful graphic with all 32 teams. Gonna highlight, as we like to do, a handful of the big movers and shakers. Definitely, it felt like a week where, there was a little bit of movement at the top. The bottom really feels like it's settling in. So let's focus on the middle class here. And I want to start, talked about it with Jay Glazer. We've talked about the Dolphins a little bit. I don't know if I've ever moved a team up so many spots. Got them up 5 spots from last week. The Miami Dolphins up to number 25. And I feel perfectly fine about it because the Dolphins looked like a viable NFL team losing to Arizona 28-27. You realize the Dolphins hadn't scored more than 15 since Tua Tagovailoa got hurt back on that Thursday night game in week 2. They were hopeless. And they're not hopeless anymore. Not saying they're good. Not saying they're going to be able to pull out of this. They do have to play at Buffalo, followed by at the Rams. It's going to be tough. I don't know if they can do it, but I trust that they can give it a spirited effort, which is more than what I felt about them before Tua came back from his injury. So I take the Dolphins seriously, I guess is what I'm trying to say, which is a step in the right direction for them. Let's jump up to number 20, down 4 spots. Just feels like one step forward, 3 steps back for the Cincinnati Bengals, who land at number 20 after getting blown out by Philadelphia. And look, I didn't need the Bengals to win this game. I thought that was going to be an uphill battle. I think they were favored against Philly, which I thought was weird. I thought that was a weird line, but I did not think Cincinnati would lose by 20 and give up 6 straight scoring drives to Philadelphia. I mean, that was great opening drive by Cincinnati to kind of set the tone, and it did not work at all. Philly bossed that game from that point on. So I saw afterward, I think Joe Burrow said they need to win 7 of 9, and that feels doable. In a vacuum, sure. I mean, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, that's all great, and it's going to give you a chance in most of the games you play, but I'm saying that for half the season at this point, guys, and it's got you well below 500 in a tough division. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see it with a little more consistency. Like I said, every time it feels like you have that moment where you're like, oh yeah, this is the Bengals we know. Something else happens. And this feels like it's going to be a hell of a hard hole to dig out of. Just above them at number 19, up 3 spots, we got the LA Rams. I just love how quickly a season can turn, because it was very, very real that the Rams were thinking about trading Cooper Kupp and who knows what else. And then they look fantastic against the Vikings, and we're back on, baby. We're a game out of first place in a crowded NFC West. Everything is still on the table. It's a good reminder not to be too reactionary to much of anything that you see. I mean, this guy's lost by 30 to the Cardinals back in September. Such bad injury luck, but maybe they're coming out of it. I think we've talked about that on this show, that just hang on until the reinforcements can come. And it looks like it's happening. And just as somebody who wants to watch the Rams play football, I have to say I'm pretty damn excited about it. Up again, we're looking at the middle class here because the ends feel like they stay about the same, but up 2 spots at number 16. Let's talk about the Denver Broncos. And I'll say this for them. Still don't know how for real they are, but they win the games that they're supposed to. And that is an admirable trait. Ask the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens about winning the games you're supposed to. All of the Steelers' losses are to teams that are either above 500 or at 500. Seattle to open the season, no shame in that. Pittsburgh, no shame in that. LA Chargers, these are incredibly defensible losses. And when you get to play overmatched opponents like the Saints, like the Panthers, like the Raiders, you take care of business. Now they're 2 games above 500. So even if you lose the next 2, which they very well might, they're against Kansas City and Baltimore. Even if that happens, you've put the hay in the barn in the games that you need to. That's how you wind up stealing a wild card spot. Don't know if they can, but they're setting themselves up nicely for that sort of situation. Let's wrap it up. I feel bad. A team that I did not talk about in the recap episode because there was just too much going on. Sunday was crazy. Up 1 spot to number 8, the Philadelphia Eagles are starting to look like those Philadelphia Eagles. 3 straight games now. Even look, the Browns game was pretty ugly. Obviously, the weird stuff with Nick Sirianni chirping at his fans. But ever since then, they blew the doors off the Giants. They blew the doors off the Bengals. Everything's clicking. Jalen Hurts looks great. The running game is there to provide the steady rhythm of the offense. And when you got Smitty and AJ, just throw it up. Top of that, defense looked like such a problem in the early going. It looks like they're starting to figure things out. After that opening period, the Bengals, it was nothing doing for them most of the day. And when your offense is moving the ball like that, that's how you wind up pulling away, scoring almost 40 points on the road against Cincinnati. I think it's flying under the radar because this was the only boring game in the early window, really. Like everything else was this crazy finish. The Eagles just quietly handling business for back-to-back weeks now. They've got a real opportunity here. Next 2 games looking very winnable before you play Washington for the first time. I don't want to jinx it because we know how quickly the vibes can go south in Philly, but everything kind of feels like it's starting to come together for Philadelphia, and maybe they can get back to being that team from 2022 that was so hard to beat. I'm probably getting a little out over my skis with that, but I've been impressed here the last 2 weeks just how efficiently the Eagles have taken care of business. I just want to make sure I say I see you, Eagles fans. It did not go unnoticed. It was a very impressive win on Sunday. All right, that does it for the power rankings. Chiefs, Lions stay the same at the top. We can get into that another time. That does it. Week 8 is in the books. We will be back Thursday like we always are. So much to get to as we flip forward to week 9. As always, we got some good games. Dolphins, Bills, already mentioned it. Cowboys, Falcons. We got the Lions and Packers. Yeah, we got some bangers on the slate for week 9. So we will be back to look at all of those. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, however you prefer to do it. Make sure that's in your feed on Thursday as we get you all the news and information for this upcoming weekend. Until then, I appreciate it so much. I'll chat with y'all real soon.